today is 22nd of February 2010. Ray, could you share with us your life story?
I'll try to share my life story, but it's a long life and a lot has happened to it, so I've got to be very brief. I was born in Germany. I went to school until I was 9 in Berlin. I had to leave Nazi Germany in 1938. I moved to Switzerland for 6 months. I learned to speak the Swiss dialect. Then I moved to Holland for 6 months. And then I went for the summer holidays to England. And while I was in England, the war broke out. So I had to stay in England. And I really grew up as an English person. I was 9 when I started to learn English. And by the time I left school at 16, I felt very, very English. I changed schools and I went to school in London for 2 years to learn physics, chemistry, biology. I had a wonderful biology teacher who supported my mother, who wanted me to be a doctor. And he helped me to get into a medical school. And so I started at University College London to study medicine. And during the summer holidays, I took a job in a hospital as a ward orderly. And that was a very, very useful experience. I needed the money, so I did the work, because it convinced me that I really didn't want to be a doctor at all. So I worked very hard to get a scholarship so that I could stay in anatomy. And I got the scholarship, and I spent a year and a half getting a degree in anatomy. At the end of that time, I had a very interesting interview, or three interesting interviews. One with Bernard Katz, one with Professor J.Z. Young, and one with Hans Grüneberg, the geneticist. And they invited me to study in their group. I chose Professor J.Z. Young because I knew him, and I thought, rightly or wrongly, that I would have most opportunities with him. So then I did a PhD under J.Z. Young, and he invited me to stay in the department as an assistant lecturer, and then I never had to worry about anything. He looked after me very, very well. And I was in that department for 11 years. I taught anatomy to medical students, to undergraduate students, looking for an anatomy degree. And then in 1961, I went for a year sabbatical leave to Madison, Wisconsin, to work with Rose and Woolsey on thalamocortical pathways. I went back to England, to University College for 3 years, and then finally emigrated to the States in 1964 and spent the next 13 years in Madison, Wisconsin. They were very productive years. I had wonderful colleagues, excellent technical help. And after 13 years, for reasons that I don't have time to go into, but it would be interesting to discuss, I left Madison and moved to the University of Chicago. I was there for 7 years, basically in charge of a neurobiology program within the Department of Pharmacology and Physiology. And then I was invited to take the chair at Oxford University, the chair of anatomy. And since I knew Oxford from my childhood, this was very appealing to me. So I moved to Oxford, spent the next 12 years as head of department in Oxford, and retired in 1996 because I was too old to go on as head of department. I moved back to Wisconsin, where John Harting was chairman of the anatomy department that I had been in. John had previously been a postdoc in my lab, and John invited me back to the department. I spent 10 years in the Madison department as a retired researcher. And then I decided really I wasn't going to be able to do any more active research. I couldn't no longer get funding. And I moved to Istanbul, where I had a daughter, married daughter, and 3 grandchildren, and where I had wonderful colleagues in Marmara University. And I worked with them for 4 years, and that's as far as I've got. I haven't got to the end of the story. I don't know what's going to happen next, but I'm about to move back to Oxford. All right?